Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar. This is the Safeguarding Association show brought to you this evening by Kate Young, the founder of the Safeguarding Association. And tonight I'm going to be taking you through some of the changes, updates in safeguarding and key things really for you to be aware of as practitioners, as people working within the family justice sector. The areas we're going to be looking at tonight, I'll come on to in a moment, but for the purposes of tonight's live webinar, because this is being live and it's being recorded, this is the Safeguarding Association show, and we're looking today at the updates recently for practitioners to be aware of when working within the safeguarding sector, and particularly when working within the family justice arena. Tonight, I want to look at three things that have happened that I feel have an impact on the way practitioners work. There's certainly things to be aware of depending what your role is within safeguarding and also the organisation you work for. And those areas are as follows. The first is about the non-expert expert in court proceedings. The second is a consultation that's happening at the moment in relation to children in care cases or in family cases that's taking place. And the third thing I want to look at is the report that was released and published at the beginning part of this week into the Oxfam GB safeguarding issues which have arisen. We're going to start with the non-expert expert. And the reason this is important is that when we work within the family justice arena and within safeguarding, to some extent, we are all experts in what we do, to some extent. There are others of us who hold ourselves out as having more expertise, more knowledge, more skills than others. And as such, we put ourselves forward, or those of us who feel like that, put themselves forward as experts in a particular area and can be asked by the court to write reports or do assessments or analyses. Generally speaking, within the family justice arena, we're talking about people who are therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, maybe a whole host of medical practitioners who diagnose children where there have been non-accidental injuries or there are concerns about how a child has come about an injury, things like that. Or it could be to do with their development, it could be to do with their functioning. We also have people who are very well respected in their fields of health visiting, who do overviews for paediatric purposes, a number of GPs who get involved, the police. There are a whole host of potential experts, as well as several designated family leads who feel that they have a role to play. However, I will caveat that with not everybody who puts themselves forward as an expert, not everybody who is asked to provide a report is doing so as an expert. But the case I want to talk about doesn't come from family law. Actually, the case comes from a very, very niche area of climate credits. Now, I had vaguely heard of these, so really do not worry if you had never, ever heard of them at all. That's not the point. What happened in this case is that an investigation happened by the police. The police instructed an expert to look at the allegations and to give an opinion. Said expert gave an opinion. That was presented to the defence, as it has to be in these proceedings, those sorts of proceedings, and the defence commissioned their own assessment and their own report. Now, the defence commissioned their report from the world leading expert in climate credits. Now, things may have ended there. However, for some reason, the expert that the police had commissioned got in touch with the expert the defence had commissioned and asked the defence expert not to give evidence. As a result of that communication, the lawyers involved in the case, quite understandably, then wanted to probe a bit further and ask why on earth the prosecution expert had wanted to persuade the defence expert to not give evidence. And so there was a hearing behind closed doors with the lawyers present, but without a jury, because this was done in criminal proceedings. And through the process of cross-examination by the defence solicitor, it transpired that the expert that the police had commissioned couldn't remember an awful lot about his educational history. And in terms of the area he was giving evidence in, the area he was asked to be expert in, he had seen a documentary in which it had been mentioned once. He was aware of the defence expert and was aware that he was the world leading expert, but had never read anything that he had ever produced. Now, this is an extreme case, and you may be asking, why on earth is this relevant for what we are doing in the world of child protection? Well, the relevance is this. I am very well aware of practitioners who perhaps, and I use this word very, very loosely, embellish their CVs to make it look better. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that people make up things or that they invent things a la Joey from Friends, but I have known experience be expanded upon, or actually practitioners trying to go the extra mile to help a family. And in doing so, they appreciate that it's going outside of their sphere of expertise. It's going outside of their, of perhaps what they should be doing, but they're thinking of the bigger picture and they're thinking of the best case scenario for the young person or the child that they're working with. Now, on the one hand, that is really helpful for the child and it's really potentially helps them out of a very difficult situation. However, it can be very, very dangerous for the professional or the practitioner who is taking that step. What it can do is lead to all sorts of questions being asked about the processes, being asked about the reasoning behind it, being asked about what authority that person had, was authority sought to do that particular thing. And that can leave the organisation and the individual open to a whole host of scrutiny that it simply doesn't need. Now, that can feel like, what is the point of trying to help out? And I'm not really talking about low-level stuff here, but it's about being aware of your actions. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? And is that within your remit? So if you are assessing somebody or you are helping a family out, are you doing so appropriately? Are you doing so within the bounds of your professional qualifications? Or are you slightly stepping outside of that because that would, in your opinion, be the best outcome for the child and almost damn the consequences? Again, I appreciate I'm being extreme. I have seen this happen where best of intentions have been used and it has caused untold problems. Now, in this particular scenario, in terms of the climate credit expert, there were 20 other cases which now need to be examined at significant cost to the public purse. And I have no doubt there'll be an inquiry into how on earth this person was instructed when he had next to no qualifications and certainly no expertise in the area that he was instructed. But it's a warning to all of us to make sure that when we are taking work on or we are undertaking instructions, that we're doing so within our professional boundaries and we're doing so within the remit of our knowledge and skills, so that whilst it may feel like it's the right thing to do, we are not overstepping our mark to the point where we're putting ourselves at risk. And that's really important. When I know more about that particular case, I will update newsletter subscribers and probably put it into another show or another blog post about the implications that have come out of that particular scenario. The second thing I want to talk to you about tonight is the consultation into children cases in the family court. If you work within the family court arena, you might be aware that this issue's been ongoing for some considerable time. And in fact, most practitioners will be aware that there has been a consistent request from society at large to open up the family courts so that it can have as much scrutiny as the criminal courts. There are a number of issues raised by practitioners around that. First of all, the media has always been allowed in. It's up to the judge or the magistrate as to whether or not that was appropriate and whether or not reporting restrictions could be put in place. But the courts are looking at this in more detail, and the courts want to have a good overview of, or the Ministry of Justice rather, wants to know professionals' views on the issues that arise from children in family cases, and actually the wider issues around that also. So if you would like to get involved in the consultation, I will put the link to that in the notes below the this particular webinar, and I'll send it out to you as part of the newsletter update as well. So if you want to take part, and I would urge you, if you work with young people, I would urge you to take part in this consultation, because it's going to affect them. It's great as practitioners, us saying what we think, but actually the voice of the child is really important in these scenarios. And if you know or have had experience of adverse impact of children where their parents have been within the family court arena, or where they've tried to deal with matters themselves, then it's important that you get involved with this consultation. The final thing I wanted to talk to you about tonight, or certainly to raise with you, is the Oxfam report that was published the early part of this week. And that report has been published, and the independent chair is Jim Gamble, who many of you may recall was the former head of CEOP and is now an independent chair of a couple of local safeguarding children's boards. More on those in a moment. Now, this report is significant, and again, I will put the link to the PDF in the notes below this, and also in the newsletter or the email that comes out to send you the recording of this as well. There are over 70 recommendations that have been made. Now, this investigation review came about as a result of the concerns which were raised following allegations made against a former worker. Now, the report doesn't cover that, nor does it cover the issues in Haiti. They've been dealt with by way of separate review. But what this report has done is delve into the workings of Oxfam GB and look at the implications, and look at the changes that are needed in order to best safeguard the vulnerable people that Oxfam work with. Now, Oxfam is an exceptionally noble charity. They've been around a long time, but the issues that have arisen are really significant. One of the issues that was raised was that when the review panel wanted to look at what safeguarding incidents or issues there had been, they were directed to a spreadsheet. Now, this spreadsheet was not at all complete. it didn't have full information within it, and it certainly didn't record outcomes of investigations or what actually happened as a result of conversations, who was talking to who, things like that. Now, for those of you working in education, I can imagine your jaws are dropping on the floor, because the requirements that you have are so stringent that in order to have just a spreadsheet that isn't complete at all, you know that Ofsted would be down on you like a ton of bricks. This is important, however, for a number of reasons. Within working together to safeguard children, there are now more requirements on organisations other than those within education. Now, I am well aware that external organisations to the education sector don't always have the access to the same sort of reporting processes that schools have. And schools have had those because you've been doing this for years and years and years. I am well aware that there are small and large organisations that may be out of school clubs, they may be Saturday organisations that do fun things with children there, that do not have a process for recording safeguarding incidents. They now need to, under working together to safeguard children. Under working together to safeguard children. But this is a global organisation. And really, for me, that highlights the difficulties that have occurred and that are likely to occur for smaller organisations when trying to implement these things. There were much, much bigger issues in terms of the Oxfam report. Things like safeguarding issues not being reported appropriately, criminal issues taking place and the matters not being passed on to the relevant organisations, not necessarily just the police, but certainly those when they're working in external territories, what is happening there. There were issues in terms of their trading arm. So there were lots of under 18s working in shops, but there was nobody managing the shops, or certainly within the shops at the time, who was appropriately safeguarding trained. That I see as an issue probably for a number of organisations where you are trying to help out and you're providing support for younger people, but you maybe don't have anybody within your organisation who is safeguarding trained or a safeguarding lead. You'll need to consider that, because I think the implications for this are potentially far-reaching. And you'll need to have something, certainly in terms of working together to safeguard children as well. So be aware of that. Like I said, the report runs to lots and lots of pages. It's over 100 pages long, and I certainly haven't managed to digest everything within it yet, because it is so substantial. But certainly from what I've read and what I've digested thus far, there are a number of issues within it, the two of which I've just highlighted there, that as organisations external to education, we're going to have to make sure that there are sufficiently robust processes and procedures in place in order to protect the children and people that we are working with. And I'm fairly certain that everybody watching the video or watching the replay or listening to the audio of this live briefing will have experience of organisations who really don't have robust enough processes in place, probably because they're volunteer run, and probably because there really isn't an awful lot of funding going around. If you are aware of those organisations and you have the skills to help them, then you might want to point them in the right direction for some training or for some updating. And I'm more than happy for you to point people in the direction of the association, and I will do what I can to help those organisations who really do need to up their game as far as safeguarding reporting is concerned. The final thing tonight is the introduction of safeguarding partnerships. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you will know that I've raised this on a number of occasions, and every time I have raised it, I have been shocked by the number of practitioners that weren't even aware that local safeguarding children's boards were going and were being replaced by safeguarding partnerships. Safeguarding partnerships came into play the 29th of June this year, so 2019. They are going to have slightly different functions to the local safeguarding children's boards. I urge each and every one of you to get in touch with your prior contacts at the local safeguarding children's board. The chances are they are still the same, and find out what their processes and procedures are. I expect that in lots of areas, all of those of you who fed into the local safeguarding children's board will have been emailed, if not sent, an updating document which sets out what the processes are now for local safeguarding partnerships. If you've seen it but not really known what it is, I urge you to have a look at it. If you are in education and you're about to come to the end of your term, then make sure you are aware of what its contents are, ready for the next term, because it's going to be important, because local safeguarding children's boards do not exist and they have been replaced by safeguarding partnerships. So you need to know how your safeguarding partnership operates, who you need to be contacting, what their processes are, what they are offering, so that you can work out whether there's anything different to the way the local safeguarding children's boards were run, and you can update all of your policies and procedures with the right information for your area. And I say for your area because every area will have a slightly different process. There is no standard process in terms of the way these safeguarding partnerships not. Let me tell you a little bit about the association, because for some of you, I appreciate I may have been around for quite a while. For others of you, and the association may be very new to you. The association has been founded so that I can help, or we help, the practitioners, so everybody from your designated safeguarding leads, head teachers, through to social workers and court experts, effectively non-lawyers who work within the family justice arena, navigate that process and procedure with confidence so that you can spend less time in the witness box and more time where it matters, i.e. in your schools, in your offices, or with your clients, doing the work that you are so amazing at. If you'd like to know more about the association, head over to our website at www.safeguardingassociation.com. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to email me at hello@safeguardingassociation.com.